All right, looks like we're live. We're back here today with Live on EigenLayer. We're going to be doing a quick live stream interview. We're talking about some really cool stuff. We're really talking about consumer crypto and UX and building apps and the things that I really like to talk about today. So I'm joined by Itai. He is with Dynamic. So I'll let you introduce yourself, introduce your company, and then we'll dive right in.
Love it. Thank you so much for having me. I've been a huge fan for a while, so I appreciate the time today. So I'm Itai, everyone, co-founder, CEO of Dynamic. We started Dynamic about 2.5 years ago. My co-founder and I met around 18 years ago at this point at MIT. And so we've been friends ever since, for better or worse. At this point, I think it's been too long to not be friends anymore. So we've continued on that journey. We've been obsessed with crypto for a while. I think we bought our first Bitcoin in 2012, 2013, and then we kind of have been watching from the sidelines for a very long time. And about 2.5 years ago, we came to this kind of realization that was pretty straightforward, which is if you open your phone in 5 years and look at every app on your phone, or go to a website and look at every website, it's going to have a crypto component to it. Now, you might not know about it, you might not care about it, but it's going to be there because it's going to enable kind of fintech experiences and turn every app on your phone into a fintech app. It's going to enable kind of multiplayer experiences for things like gaming. It's going to enable identity. It's just going to be a kind of a built-in part of your crypto stack or of your app. And so in that world, you need companies that enable that crypto stack, right? That let you magical experiences. And that's really where Dynamic comes to play. Really, what we're taking care of is everything that happens when you click login on an app. And that can be as Web3 native as at one extreme. So if you go to Magic Eden today and you click login, that's powered by Dynamic. That's a very Web3 native experience. But then on the other side of the spectrum, if you go to some games that Animoca Brands is building and you click login, you don't realize it's crypto at all. And that's also powered by Dynamic, right? And so the idea is really to power everything that happens when you click login, whether it's a very Web3 native experience and crypto in the forefront, or whether it's a Web2 native experience where crypto is a part of the technical stack to enable some experiences. So that was a short to long description of Dynamic in a nutshell.
No, that's really great. I think that gives a good, entry into some of the stuff that we're going to be diving a lot deeper into, because I feel like when you talk about adoption and you talk about, consumer crypto and building apps and stuff, I feel like there's two main challenges. One of them is, I think identity, like, and authentication and authorization and how we think about people as a person or as an identity is such a massive part of improving UX. And I think a lot of people obviously agree with this, but I don't think some people kind of realize how big of a part of it is. Because when you kind of think about how seamless it is in the traditional tech world, if you've been building apps and then you kind of come into this space, it's a massive shock because you're so used to these much smoother identity experiences, email and password. You have, phone number, and you have Magic Link, and you have all these different options, and everything is kind of now stored, either as a JWT or with sessions. All these problems are really figured out. So we're tackling other problems now, like in the Web2 space, but it's so much harder to kind of figure this out because you now have to work within the constraints of the products that you're building on, the protocols that you're building on. But you also have this aspect of financialization and slightly, or even not even slightly, like massively larger challenges that are brought to the table if there is some type of security vulnerability, because you're no longer like just exposing their identity, you're also exposing their financial assets potentially. So yeah, like trying to figure that out is a really interesting problem space. And I think from what I've seen so far, you guys are doing an awesome job of that. So I think we want to dive a lot into the Dynamic product and questions about it, but I think for people to understand that better, let's do a demo and then we can kind of dive into those questions after that.
Love it. Okay, so let's do it. So let me open up some windows and I'll show a couple key things. Bear with me for a second here as I kind of do kind of key experiences. 1 second. Let's do, let me set up some different kind of examples that I think might be cool to do. Okay, so let's present my screen, share my screen. There we go, entire screen. Let's see. Whoa, can everyone see this okay?
There we go. Looks great.
Whoa. Okay, thank you. So, okay, so as we said, right, dynamic is really everything that happens when you click login, right? And that can be a very Web3 experience and a very Web2 experience. So back to our kind of earlier, if I kind of go to Magic Eden and I click login, that is a very Web3 experience, right? So I can log in with Solana and Bitcoin and EVM, and I can do more sophisticated stuff like link additional wallets, my EVM wallet and my Solana wallet and my profile all to the same account. That is one example of dynamic, right? So this is all powered by dynamic. That is one very Web3 experience that dynamic provides. But then on the other side of this, if you go to a company like DFlow, which is kind of a trading app on your phone, and log in, right? Dynamic.xyz. By the way, if anyone has questions about dynamic, you're welcome to email me at that address. If I now log in and enter a code, let's grab my code, 442895, then I've logged into the app and I can trade, in this case, coins, or I can do any SocialFi type experience. In the case of a customer like Bracket Game that does games, without ever knowing anything about crypto, right? And so dynamic can serve this Web3 use case or this very Web2 use case. Now, the demo and what we're going to go through is really two sides to dynamic. What developers get to give their end users, so our SDK, as well as what developers get in terms of kind of a control panel or developer dashboard where they can start doing really fancy stuff. Both, and Nader, please keep me honest here because I can talk for a while, and I think ideally stop me for questions at any point. Otherwise, we'll just be here all day in the stream of me talking until people.
No, this is great. This is great. Already, I just want to call out how nice this demo dashboard is, and how people can, anyone watching can actually go here and configure all of these different settings to kind of see how this would actually work in practice. So that I just wanted to call that out. That was one of the more fun experiences I had when I was first diving into all this.
Love it. I very much appreciate it. We think about this, and maybe that's a discussion topic. We think about the tools to show the tools, right? And so an SDK is something that you kind of want to visualize and show both the SDK part, and we'll see both kind of the actual payload that you receive back. And so we spend just as much time on the tools to show the tools. So whether it's the demo environment or documentation, as we do on the SDK itself. And it's really important because it helps explain kind of the power of dynamic. And where it comes into play is to show, hey, dynamic can be a very Web3. So if I toggle on wallets, I can make dynamic look like an EVM and Solana and Bitcoin wallet adapter, right? That kind of works across all chains. Or I can fully abstract that away and say, hey, there's no mention of crypto anywhere. And I'll do kind of email login and social login or phone login or a mix and match of both. And I can pretty much change and order them however I would like or structure them however I would like. Anywhere from RSDK or kind of, bring your own UI with a fully headless solution. So dynamic, as the name suggests, is very dynamic, right? It can be whatever kind of you want it to be in terms of copy and style and design. And it's a very, very flexible product. Now, in terms of,
you mentioned headless. Does that mean there is a non-headless? Like, do you all offer UI components, I guess?
Yeah. So this is a good example of like the dynamic UI, which can be more of a kind of a pop-up, full page, kind of embedded widget. So a company like Kodata, for instance, they use dynamic as a kind of a full page login. So if you go to login, it just sits within the page, or kind of a pop-up like Magic Eden, or abstracted away like DFlow, right? Where there was no dynamic logo here or anything. It just kind of worked in the background, right? And so you can mix and match.
Got it. So I think like these UI components are really, really powerful and really cool because, when I was working at AWS, we had our own UI component kit. and it helped us onboard literally like tens or even hundreds of thousands of developers, because people often just want to like build something and prototype something, and they don't want to spend like weeks or days building out the same functionality over and over. Now, if they end up like hitting on something that is going to be production ready one day, they might go back and like rebuild that from scratch or whatever. I mean, in this case, the UI looks great, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just so nice to have these pre-built components. So I'm guessing it's just a few lines of code for like this. You like import it from React and you like render it or something like that.
Exactly. So the idea is, and we'll touch upon like the embedded wallet side in a second, but exactly and this is what I mentioned on the tools to build the tools, right? Installing the SDK is really two steps. It's kind of configure if you want EVM or Solana or Bitcoin or anything of that sort. And then configure whether you're using Ethers or Veeam and whether you're using anything like that. Copy this and you're done, right? And to your point, and we'll touch on this, we have this user management or like dashboard where you can start toggling things on and off. So as a good example, and we'll come back to this, but as a good example, you can set it up and just say, look, let me toggle on Apple. Let me toggle on Google. Let me toggle on wallet login or multi-wallet functionality, which is what we saw with Magic Eden, which is you can link multiple wallets to the same account. Or let me kind of do information capture. So I can say, look, if I log into kind of my platform, let's grab a wallet. This is a good example of a wallet. If I log in to Dynamic or log into my site and I am a new user, you can prompt custom fields and not just take care of authentication, but take care of onboarding, right? So you can tell a user, hey, do you want to add your optional email address so we can notify you of stuff, or optional Telegram, or a drop down of which group you're in if you're signing up to a game, right? And so the idea, and it's exactly to your point, the idea is not just to take care of abstracting away authentication, but to make it so you can do everything user management related within minutes. And that's an important part, which is, hey, you can start with these components, you can expand to your own, but the Dynamic can support you on a weekend project or a hackathon project, or can support you on an enterprise level application.
So I guess like in terms of production stuff, what percentage do you see like using the UI components versus writing their own from scratch? Because I feel like in my head it's probably like very skewed towards the UI components, because I think we've gotten to a point where a lot of big companies even are using like pre-built components from like Auth0 and like Okta and all these other things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think the places where you start seeing, so the vast majority use our UI components. The places where you're starting to see people move to their UI components or kind of a white label type solution or a headless solution is the bigger the company, right? And so as you scale the company up, you see two things. You first see that they usually have an authentication solution. So they have an Auth0 that they implemented 5 years ago and they can't really migrate. And in that case, what we offer them is the ability to bring your own JWT. So actually leverage Dynamic with the Auth0 login that you use. But then to your point, in the case of really sophisticated apps like DFlow that have spent months on kind of crafting a full experience, they kind of want to control everything, right? And so those are good examples of where you're starting to move from kind of a, hey, I want to spin this up and I'll kind of iterate over the next couple of months, versus, hey, I want to control the full experience end to end.
Awesome. That makes sense. Yeah, I could totally see that.
And by the way, just to my point on onboarding, right? So as a good example, we saw, hey, you can collect information with Dynamic. You can also gate access, right? So it's not just authentication, it's authorization, right? So it's your full user management tool. So you can say, look, gate access based on someone's Farcaster ID, right? So only let people with these Farcaster IDs or these phone numbers or emails log in. So as you launch a beta, you can actually use Dynamic to manage your full beta. You don't need to deploy every time you want to add a wallet to a waitlist, deploy new code or do anything like that. You can literally just have an ops person on your team go in and update it here. And so that's what we were going for, is not just the simplification on the A side, but the idea that you should be able to toggle on a new chain, toggle on, and a good example is like, hey, toggle on a bearer chain or anything like that in a single click, right? That is what we were going for here. Not just the simplification of the SDK itself, but the tool set to make your life easy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you go back to kind of where you had scopes? I'm kind of curious to look at that a little more.
Yeah, so configurations, access.
Yes. So, you know, I worked with Cognito quite a bit at AWS, and, you know, a lot of what we were doing in the advanced stages of most products and applications using it had a lot to do with like different scoped access controls, like more fine-grained stuff there. I'm curious how this works.
It's exactly, so that's what we're going for, right? And you can see this on apps like Maple Finance that use dynamic, where if you log in, this is, by the way, a good example of dynamic that's almost headless, but actually still uses our components, right? So log in with Google, it looks like Maple, it acts like Maple, but actually is dynamic. And or a good other example is Liquify, which does a lot of the kind of token drops out there, right? So this is a good example of where our UI is used. But the idea of scopes, to your question, is, look, when you build a system, you really care about, on the user front, authenticating a user, but then authorizing a user. And what you can start doing is these really clever things where you can say, look, let's define a scope called allow access, or VIP, and define it based on either a set list of emails or a set list of emails, and or alternatively, define it based on what someone has in their wallet. So the cool thing is, right, you're connecting with a wallet or you're bringing your own wallet. I can say, look, if you have more than 5 ApeCoin in your wallet, or if you own this NFT, you're a member of this scope. And so we can return it within a payload, within a
nice.
And say, hey, based on that, you know, you can render different parts of your site, right? So you can build VIP experiences to your token holders, but still let everyone else log in, right? So this is a good example, right? So I logged in with this user. This user, as a good example, has MetaMask. I connected 2 embedded wallets that we'll touch upon in the Dapper wallet, right? But now this payload for that user has a bunch of information on whether they're a member of specific scopes, and as a result can do things, right? So that's really what we're going for, which is you can start building these really sophisticated experiences.
So if I was to implement this on, for instance, like a web application, do you all use JWTs or do you use sessions and cookies like on the server, or both? I'm just curious, you know, what people are doing, or if you have an opinion about that.
So it's a really great question. So we actually gave both. So by default, we use local storage and things like JWTs, but you can start using cookies for more sophisticated stuff. So you can essentially, let's say, as a good example, we see this a lot. We have a partner that we love called Snag. Right? And Snag is, they do the marketplace for like Pudgy Penguins and other sites, right? And so Pudgy is a good example, has right, their main marketplace, and that's a subdomain called marketplace.pudgy.com. And they might have other sites. And the idea is that the user should be able to stay logged in across them, right? And so that's where cookies come in. Look, how do we keep a user logged in across 2 or 3 subdomains very, very quickly? And so someone can move from just kind of JWTs and local storage into using cookies for some of this stuff. So that was an extremely long way of saying both.
Okay, nice. In terms of the support for like sessions and cookies, does that mean you all had to kind of go out of your way to support like Next.js and things like that? Or was there any, like, I'm just curious about building these types of tools, because I know you start, okay, I want to support this and that, and things start getting complicated.
Yes.
Yeah, just curious what that looks like.
So we world. I'll stop sharing for a second so I can see you back, and then I'll continue.
Yeah, sure.
But the world of authentication is a fun one because it's a world of edge cases.
That's a very interesting way to put it. It's fun because to me, it's kind of like, because I worked focused on that quite a bit at AWS, and it was fun sometimes, but it was kind of a nightmare at other times.
It's a world of edge cases, right? Like I think that's we have stronger words internally, but I'm using nicer words here. We have I use stronger words internally to describe some of this, but you're right. Look, like it's not just even Next.js. It's Next.js of a certain version, together with WAGMI of a different version, together with like your node is set up differently, right? And so we got to a point actually where we have this tool. Let me actually, after I stop sharing, let me actually share it again. Which is we have this really cool tool that we built internally, and we'll actually share more about this kind of in a blog post called Dynamic Doctor. Where we kind of built this internal tool where we let people just run a single command, and based on that, we can kind of diagnose a bunch of these dependency issues or a bunch of these edge cases, right? Because this stuff gets really, really, really complex very quickly, right? Like how you work with like React 18 versus 17 versus Next.js versus Vite, etc. It gets really, really, really complex. And so this is a good example of like us saying, look, people have their own implementation of everything, right? They're by definition, like everyone has the tools that they use that are right for the task. We'll need to work within all of them. And so how do we both simplify our SDK so it works across everything, but also make it very easy to debug? Because
so how did you all figure that out? Like, what was the answer
for this?
Yeah, I mean, to make that happen, because working in the JavaScript ecosystem and the TypeScript ecosystem and the Node.js ecosystem and all this, like Next.js is essentially kind of a nightmare when you start having these, interoperability problems and all these unknowns. Yeah, I'm just curious, like what was the general approach to kind of making that?
Yeah, it's a combination, honestly, of two things. It's a combination of, first, we have a lot of testing, like automation tests. Look, there's another level of complexity here, just which is interesting, which is we live in the world of wallets, right? And every wallet is inherently a startup, right? And so you don't only get kind of changes from like different configurations, but you also have wallets shipping code every day that break things as well, right? And so there's like, really, you live in a world of uncertainty. And so the way you solve it is a very robust testing suite. We find, and we're fortunate to be able to work with phenomenal wallets, right? And we have channels with them. And so we detect, just 2 weeks ago, one of the wallets we worked with, we detected a version change that they had within a minute of them actually publishing it to apparently 0.1% of their users. We detected it broke certain sites. And so we test the living, I'm not going to use that word, out of out of this stuff. And the second thing is we move a little bit slower as a result, right? We move, and this is only in JavaScript land, right? Like think about Flutter and think about like Swift and stuff like that. It creates its own level of complexity. And then another, just to throw in more complexity there, we don't just live in the world of EVM, right? We live in a world of EVM and Solana and Cosmos. And so how they interact is also kind of a different layer of complexity.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, let's dive into that a little bit. I guess what other platforms that you support? I know you support React Native. You mentioned Flutter. Do you have native iOS and Android support?
Coming soon. So today, React Native, to your point, React, Flutter, and then coming soon to a platform near you, right? The idea, Dynamic should work anywhere, right? And what we're going to see more on I think where Web3 goes is Web3 is not different than Web2, right? It's going to follow the same trends, which is everything will be on mobile, right? So by definition, we're not It's not like all of a sudden, like we've invented browser extensions and everyone moves back to desktop. Everyone stays on mobile. Gaming, work on Unity and Unreal Engine, right? And folks have their different tools, whether it's Swift or React Native or Flutter or things like Kotlin, right? Like people choose their own adventure. That's going to stay. And so really to think about the dynamic roadmap for that, all you need to do is open Auth0 or Stitch or Clerk or any of the Auth0 of the Web 2 authentication providers and see the amount of frameworks they support, and assume that we're going to do the same.
Got it. That makes sense. In terms of not the complexity, but the amount of work that is required to support all of that, landscape or whatever you would want to call that. We had this is a lot of similarities from my experience at the front end web and mobile team, AWS, because we were in charge of the SDKs. And we would have to hire a whole new separate team for Android, a whole new separate team for iOS, a separate team for React Native. Does that mean that you all are hiring and building these teams separately, I guess? And how many people are working at Dynamic, if that's public?
Yeah, we have around 20-ish people work at Dynamic today. To your point, no, the team per SDK is not going to be sustainable for us, right? Because again, you see, right? You see asks around Vue, right, as an example, right? That's really important for a lot of people, right? You see asks around Swift and how people develop there, and they're different. And so we take some shortcuts to create kind of similar code bases across a lot of them. And the second challenge is actually really interesting, and you probably have seen this a lot at AWS. It's not a challenge of just getting V1. It's around, okay, now when I launch a new feature, I need to launch it across all these, right? Because we've all been there, which is the second you announce a feature, you're going to get a set of random asks about what is available on my platform. So you can't,
Oh, right. Yeah. Like releasing across multiple platforms, like in the same feature update.
Exactly. Because otherwise you create you run after your own tail of hey, great, I have this new feature, it's awesome, but now I need to add it to Flutter, etc. And so we take some shortcuts for some shared components, some web views, for instance, to create at least a subset of the code base that's shared, and that way we can, and it's easier on in JavaScript land. It's obviously harder outside it. So Flutter, for instance, has its own tools for any Web3 kind of that you have to make, right? You can't use Veeam on Flutter, and so honestly, it's both a fascinating internal topic and a set of extremely hard challenges to solve, because we're not a 100% company.
Yeah, no, it's I'm very interested and curious about this specifically because of my experience.
Yeah,
my past experience actually kind of resonates across multiple areas. As a open source developer, as a person that worked on the client SDK team, as a person that's really interested in building high quality, UX in Web3 now, and understanding all the things that have kind of gone into it to get it to where it is today. And I think it's in really great shape. And it's interesting because I asked around after I first tried it out, and you have really good, I guess, reputation, right, among developers already. DevRel people, everyone's like, oh yeah, it's really great. And they offer really great support. So you have all that going for you. I'm curious, how long have you all been building this?
Yeah, so we've been, first, thank you for that. That made my day. So I very much appreciate that. By the way, I do think for anyone listening, there are, I think, a lot of business opportunities in building tools for SDKs. I think that's it's definitely not a solved problem, and I think they're businesses to be built there. We've been working on Dynamic for about 2.5 years. About a year of that kind of silently with a very small team, and then we kind of grew that out. And we've been fortunate to work. And this is maybe one of the cool things. I think the coolest thing that about around building a dev tools company is you get to talk to customers every day. You get to like the nice thing, both the challenging thing and the nice thing is that you can't have someone in the middle of like a developer that's implementing in our internal engineering team, right? If you have like a customer support person in the middle of that, then you've pretty much lost things in translation twice, right? And so a lot like that's both a huge challenge because it means that every day our engineers kind of have to focus on kind of triaging issues and debugging and things like that. But it is such an awesome kind of what would be the analogy here of like the fire hose, I think, fire hose of kind of data or like insight into how folks are implementing the product that you can move very, very quickly, right? If from the second I have an alpha of Flutter out till I get 10 pieces of feedback from the first 10 customers trying to implement this and getting stuck with their own configuration, I have learned so much. And so that is like a huge way in which we oh, that's really kind. Someone said on Twitter, that's really kind. Thank you, Sohail. That I think one of the biggest advantages we have as a company is the fact that we just hear directly from engineers every day. Like that is a phenomenal. That is like I think companies would pay a lot of money to like be in a position where people just yell at them all day to tell them where to improve stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like direct feedback to figure out where you need to build next, as opposed to just like guessing or working in a silo, which is, you know, not what anyone wants to do, but it sometimes happens.
Yeah. We also, there's this really interesting, and this is an advantage of crypto, and sorry if I'm rambling here, but there's like this really cool advantage of crypto, which is somehow we call it like feature bingo, which is somehow, I don't know how this happens specifically in crypto, but all of a sudden you get the same asks over a week period from like 10 people after you've never heard about before. And so you can very easily prioritize features because they come at you extremely quickly. And so that's like a cool thing I think about our space that people don't realize is like how much you hear of the same thing versus a set of 50 random things.
So in terms of Dynamic as a product and a company, why did you all decide to focus on this specifically? And, you know, kind of how did that like lead up to you starting the company and, you know, I'm just curious that history.
Yeah. So my co-founder and I, first, it was very clear to us we're starting a company. It was very clear to us. It's not our first rodeo. We've been in multiple unicorn companies. And it was very clear to us what we're doing for the next 10, 20 years of our lives. In retrospect, by the way, like my biggest regret is not starting like 5 companies earlier. This is like the most fun and challenging thing ever. So it's like, we
alpha and advice for anyone watching.
What's that?
I said that's alpha and advice for, I mean, like, you know, or good knowledge for anyone listening. Cause I think we're all like often entrepreneurial in spirit, but we don't actually take that step, you know, to actually do it right. We get comfortable, we get a job, and we like stick where we're at, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Full disclosure, it is the hardest thing ever. It is the hardest thing, and the ups and downs are hourly. And so just full disclosure, it's not for like the faint of heart, but it's fun because you get to, there's nothing more fun than like building something and having someone use it and seeing that live, right? Like that is a really awesome feeling. And I think it's hard to replicate. Now, back to your point, right? So it was just, we're starting a company. It was very clear to us we're starting a company in crypto. Because it's the thing, if you go back and kind of look at our conversations over a 10-year period, 80% is pretty much crypto. And so we were, in 2016, we thought we were late to Ethereum. And then in 2020, 2021, we thought we were late to Solana. And we tried to mint our first DJ and Ape in Solana, during that summer, which was a fun and kind of semi-broken experience. And so it's very clear to us that we're starting a company in crypto, very clear we're starting a company. And then our thesis was exactly what I said at the beginning, which was like, what do we believe about the world? And it was extremely clear to us that kind of shared financial rails, shared identity rails, shared kind of ownership rails is going to win in the long term. There's zero, like, it is extreme. I have extreme high confidence that if you fast forward 10 years, where the Visa network as a proprietary network cannot kind of compete with a public network that is kind of everyone can build on top of. That's even before things like stable coins and things like that. It's extremely clear to us that it's just a better infrastructure, ignoring prices and all that. It doesn't matter. What matters is it's fundamentally better infrastructure at scale because it creates permissionless innovation, right? It allows anyone to build on top of it. And so if you imagine that world, then you have to believe that an auth0-like company has to exist in that world, right? Like that is by definition, if the way you do identity, kind of, log into crypto rails, etc., the way you interact, it's sort of like the power grid, right? If you assume there's a power grid, then you have to assume it's a good business to sell outlets, right? Like to the power grid, right? And in our case, those are wallets, right? That's how you connect to kind of, crypto networks. And so it was a very top down. If you agree with this around the world, about the world, then you have to agree that there needs to be an auth0-like company or a company selling kind of authentication and wallets and embedded wallets in the crypto-enabled stack to enable that. And then that was really our top down. Our bottoms up when we were starting Dynamic was really, hey, do we think what's out there? And again, we were trying to mint DJ Apes on Solana, and had to refresh for 8 hours until the page kind of worked. And we were like, yeah, it doesn't work today. Therefore, there's an opportunity. That was kind of why we started Dynamic.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's very clear and makes tons of sense. And yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of us are essentially bought into the same idea that this is fundamentally better. How long it's going to take, that's another story. But it's crazy because like things move extremely fast and slow at the same time, seemingly in this space. But no, that's really cool to hear.
But by the way, I saw this. I hope it's real. I think it's real from Twitter from a couple of days ago. I assume everything on Twitter is real, but I saw this stat that essentially said at this point, like 10% of the money or kind of the payouts sent from the US to Mexico are powered by crypto rails, right? It's happening. Things are happening, right? Like we might not see it, to your point, it might look slow, but this switch is happening, right? If you open PayPal or Venmo, every PayPal or Venmo or is a wallet, right? So inherently, you already have things on your phone that are crypto wallets. You don't know about it, you don't care about it, but it's there and it's happening. And so it might not be visible to everyone, but I think we're making this massive set of strides and progress on this front.
Hell yeah. And then, you mentioned the fact that everyone already has it on their phone. And like when we kind of think of crypto, a lot of times people are thinking of the volatility, but in reality, it's more about the infrastructure and stable coins, like in terms of replacing or being a better alternative for financial transactions. The products built on these new infrastructures, their valuations might be traded in tokens, but to me that's not the interesting part. Obviously I want to get paid and I want to have equity in the company I work for, just like I did at AWS. But like the interesting thing to me is really around public, open, permissionless infrastructure that people can build on. And I think stable coins is actually right there. Those two things are kind of like the coolest thing for me. And I think like, with the advancements and improvements that we're seeing on infrastructure, fast, cheap, low latency networks, more interoperability, we will start seeing more like other use cases that are not thought of as like financial. You know, we're seeing social and we're seeing gaming and all this stuff. But yeah, the thing that we need for all that is a really great wallet. So that's cool that you all are kind of like focused on building that. And when you want to go to market, it's about the developer adoption, and because like, you know, the app is going to gain 1 million users, right? But the actual like way they get into that app is going to be through some wallet, right? So you all have done, I think, so far a really great job. I'm very curious, like, what do you feel like you have not achieved yet, and that you're currently building and improving on, that you want to kind of see happen over the next X number of months or years?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there are two big challenges that we're looking at. From the challenges I can share, we're looking at a couple more, but let's do two for the sake of argument. The first one is we are solving today a subset of the problem. We're solving the, hey, log in with an email, create a wallet in the background. You don't need to know. It kind of just works, and it just feels like you would today. But you're not solving still the next 5 is, okay, I need to on-ramp. I need to kind of convert to the right chain, right? I need to, there's a set of things. We think about the crypto-enabled stack, which is authentication, wallet, account abstraction, on-ramp, off-ramp, swapping, kind of getting into the right chain through like commerce-like solutions like Cent or Fun or things like that. And they kind of all have to work in the background. And ideally, you don't have to think about any of them. They should just kind of work. And so the challenge, and people throw around terms like chain abstraction, which is a big part of it, or abstracting away kind of gas and things of that sort. But they're all intertwined in the sense that I want to be able to create, like the way in my mind that I'm thinking about this is I want to be able as a developer to build the next Venmo based on crypto rails in a day. That is what I should be going. If you fast forward a year and we can build 1,000 Venmo-like solutions, because it takes a day to spin up that entire infrastructure for that. And then you can focus on, you as a developer, you can focus on your go-to-market, you can focus on building a nice experience, but you can build a global Venmo because you have on-ramp, off-ramp everywhere. You have a wallet that connects it. It can work on an L2 or a Solana that's really cheap. And it kind of all works kind of in orchestration, and you don't have to think about 10 solutions to combine to do that. That's the thing to go for, right? That is challenge number one. And I think we're making strides, but we're not there yet, right? We still, the fact that we're, I think about it as we're still in the realm of like, in Web3, the analogy would be, you're still talking about ACH and OAuth and Swift and stuff like that, right? Like no one talks, it just kind of works, right? You implement Stripe and you don't really think about, okay, it's going to use like the Netherlands payment system or how they do it. It just kind of works, right? And so that's what we should be going for, and that's where we spend a lot of our time thinking. The second thing we're thinking about is the concept of globality or global wallets. There are 2 steps in crypto, right? One of the cool things is you can take your assets from one app and use it in another, right? And so just creating a embedded wallet is not good enough. It's step number 1. It abstracts away the first complexity of onboarding, but it doesn't abstract away the second complexity of interacting with the ecosystem. And so where you're going to see us spend time is thinking about that step 2, which is how do you move a siloed wallet into a global wallet, right? And there are really cool attempts in the market today around what Coinbase is doing with Coinbase Smart Wallet and others. They're kind of taking different versions of that. We're going to spend a lot of time in that world. Okay, wait, I helped you, the end user, take the first step of the journey into crypto, but now the second step is interact with the ecosystem, right? And so that's the second place where we're spending our time.
So we're getting a little bit close to being finished up here on time, but I want to ask one more thing. How does account abstraction fit into all this, and implementing things like relayers and all of the, abstractions that we're kind of seeing on social networks and games and stuff that allow the user to kind of delegate signing to some other place?
Yeah, so we spend a lot of time on everything account abstraction. We work with partners there. We work with like Zero Dev and Safe and others, as well as at the kind of paymaster bundler like Pimlico or Coinbase, and StackUp, right? And Economy, which is an awesome player. But the way I think about account abstraction is like a policy engine, right? It's not a wallet. Policy engine for your wallet, meaning you can define, think about like the reason it's called like smart accounts is inherently you can define rules of the road, right? And so the way we're thinking about it is, okay, now we've created kind of a wallet for you. Now can we create dynamic, no pun intended, or a little bit of pun intended, policies around kind of how you can use that wallet. And so some policies can be done off chain, right? So through an EOA, and some policies will be done on chain so that they're trustless. And so you're going to see, I think, policies are mostly around gas. And then the next step is mostly around session keys, meaning what can I delegate to the app to do on my behalf? And then we're going to see this next set of things there. So short answer is I don't think about smart accounts as actual accounts. I think about them as kind of a policy layer for my account.
I like that a lot. Makes a lot of sense in terms of, forming a mental model around a traditional authentication system.
Yeah,
okay, awesome.
exactly.
Yeah. Now, this has been really great. I appreciate your time for coming on today. What are the steps that people should take if they're a developer and they want to start experimenting on Dynamic?
Yeah, so a couple key first one, the easiest thing to do is go to docs.dynamic.xyz and kind of follow the quick start guide, or go to app.dynamic.xyz and set up an account for your first 200 monthly active users. It's free. I think it was mentioned before, but we really like talking to folks. So ping me. I'm on Telegram. It's just my last name, so Turban on Telegram. Just ping me there. DM me on Twitter. I'm available. And we love hearing new ideas. I'll end with this, which is like one of the coolest thing about our job is we get to hear of all the cool startups that are coming out, right? And so we love this stuff. So any new idea that you have that you want to brainstorm around, ping us. But the easiest way to get started is docs.dynamic.xyz, and the demo we showed earlier, which is demo.dynamic.xyz. Don't take my word for it. Just play around with the demo.
Yeah, the demo is awesome. I highly recommend that. I'm just going to drop this one last question here, and then we'll wrap it up. Sohail wants to know, any plans to build direct wallet connectors for Telegram mini apps?
Yeah, so first, Telegram mini apps work with Dynamic today. So if you look at companies like Flooz and their Iris chatbot, that actually leverages Dynamic. You can also log in with Telegram today. You'll see more Telegram-related announcements from us in the coming weeks. Telegram third-party wallet connectors like a MetaMask or a Coinbase don't work in mini apps, mostly because mini apps are inherently just web pages embedded within Telegram. And so any pop-up like a passkey or a redirect kind of breaks the flow there a little bit. But Telegram is a huge focus for us. We actually, but we have a full guide around Telegram mini apps in our docs that you can just search for.
Awesome. Well, that's been great. Really appreciate your time today. And again, if anyone wants to get started, you can check out dynamic.xyz and you can get started there. So for anyone that came in late, this will be uploaded to YouTube very soon, so you can catch the whole discussion there. And we will be back next week with another live on EigenLayer. Thanks for stopping by.